Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, coming to you live from my editing suite straight to your ears. We are all on holiday this week, having a nice relaxing time, enjoying the great British weather. And so what we have for you is one of our compilation specials, loads of fun bits from the last few months that didn't quite fit into the show, but are really funny, really stupid, really just us messing around. These are always my favourite episodes, by the way. I absolutely love them. I genuinely think some of the best bits of Fish that we've ever done have been in these compilations, but it's all sorts of bits, all sorts of subjects, loads and loads of facts, loads and loads of fun. We really hope you enjoy it. We will be back next week with a normal episode with a very special guest. More on that next week. But for now, I guess all there is to say is on with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from 4 undisclosed locations in the UK. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with Anna Toshinsky, James Harkin, and Andrew Hunter Murray. And once again, we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with you, Andy.
My fact is that after his death, Anton Chekhov was brought back to Russia in a refrigerated railway. Bugs Bunny's going to be doing my fact for me.
I had a friend who used to sleep with his eyes open, so...
No.
Killed it.
Military style.
Every now and then we'd be sat in the front room, like, you know, playing video games or something, or just chatting. And then we'd be like, oh, Rich hasn't spoken for a while. And he'd be sat there with his eyes open, and it turned out he was asleep.
Are you sure he wasn't just trying to avoid talking to you guys? He came up with this clever way.
Was he a lizard?
He did sometimes talk in his sleep and say, shut the fuck up, James.
We had, just in the sort of modern day theatre version of that, James and I got a behind the scene tours of the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child set, which is the play in the West End in London. And we were told at the time that it takes about £1 million a week to run the whole production. There are so many different little bits and pieces that go into putting it on. And one of the things that they have is there's a moment where 2 of the characters need to emerge from a lake. And they've built under the stage a massive water tank. So on the payroll for The Cursed Child are 2 scuba instructors who go inside with these kid actors, and they have a little mouth breather on, and then they come up through the stage completely soaking. So it's like this body of water. But that's how much.
Can I just say, I was on this tour with Dan, and he's talking rubbish. It's all magic. The whole play is completely magic. And the reason I know that is because when you go backstage, you can see all the wands are backstage and they're plugged in to the electricity. So you know that it's definitely working.
Well, I didn't know you needed to charge a wand.
They're all Bluetooth.
Oh, are they now?
Yeah,
they don't mention that in the books. Okay. Sorry, I don't understand why these children had to be submerged in water before they came on stage. Was it just so they looked wet?
No, they came up through the floor of the stage. So it was a tank built underneath the stage. So they were coming up.
But why are they in water?
That, right?
Sorry,
Because of the plot, because of the story.
Because of the plot, they're coming out of a lake.
Oh, they're coming out of a lake. Sorry, I missed that bit. Right, well, that makes sense. I actually went to see the play, so I should remember that.
Wow.
But I did leave at the interval.
It happens literally just before the interval. It's the last thing you would have seen.
Well, I remember because Anna, you came out saying there's a fucking lake in this. What a load of bullshit. Why are they so wet? Why are they so wet?
I don't understand how they did it. My brain can't fathom.
Do you know who is the highest grossing actor of all time? I got sent this by our friend Justin Gaynor on email yesterday. He asked me if I knew. So,
the highest grossing actor.
So what this means is if you're in a movie, they add the entire amount of money that movie has made to your amount. So it's
brilliant.
Who's been in the most very, very high-profile movies in history.
Is it Stuntman?
I think it was the guy who I mentioned a few episodes ago, Frank Welker, who is a voiceover artist.
Scooby-Doo and The Grinch. He did the dog in The Grinch.
But think about that. The Grinch is big, but it's not The biggest. Think about the biggest movies of all time.
Okay, so Andy Serkis has been in the biggest movies of all time as CGI guy.
So what are you naming as biggest movies there then?
Avatar, Lord of the Rings.
Think bigger. Think bigger.
That BBC adaptation of Little Dorrit. That's very highly grossing, actually.
That's what. So bigger than that, even bigger than Little Dorrit.
King Kong and Lord of the Rings. Star Wars, I guess.
Have we heard of this person, or is it?
You've heard of him.
Extra.
Dan has got the best chance of getting this, I would say, but you all might.
Is it someone who plays something
Harrison
incredibly
Ford?
backgroundy?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it someone in Jackie Chan films?
No. What's the biggest grossing movie of all time?
Star Wars.
Titanic.
No.
Ben-Hur?
Is it a new movie or not?
Gone with the Wind is fair, but I'm talking about actual
Avengers.
money. Avengers. Okay. And almost all of the top 20 are Marvel films, basically.
Yes, so Robert Downey Jr. is the top.
Someone who's been in all of them.
John Favreau.
Nope.
Samuel L. Jackson.
He's number two. He's number two, but he's not been in all of them.
Is it Stan Lee?
Stan Lee.
Ah!
Because he is in a tiny cameo in every single Marvel movie up until he died and the couple after he died as well. And so if you add up all of those amounts, then he is the biggest of all time.
And he was in Mallrats as well, Kevin Smith's movie. That would have tipped it.
I'm not sure if he was in Little Dorrit, but he might have been.
At the moment, right now, there are 200 spy albatrosses in the world, which are flying around logging illegal fishing vessels. This is very cool.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because fishermen hate albatrosses famously.
They
from
do.
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and stuff. So now they have good reason to hate them, don't they?
They do have good reason, yeah. The French National Centre for Scientific Research, it fitted them with little GPS trackers, and because there are so many illegal fishing boats out there, but they switch off their unique ID systems to try and stay covert. All fishing boats have a sort of radio ID system, and if you're fishing in illegal waters, then you turn it off. But the birds cover so much ground. They can see a fishing boat from 20 miles away, and they can pick up the GPS signals that these boats aren't able to switch off. And in the first 6 months of the trial, they found 353 fishing vessels in that time, of which 1/3 had their ID systems switched off, implying that they were up to no good and fishing in illegal waters. So this could be a useful technique.
And but they're doing it unwillingly, the albatrosses, right? Do you think they ever get together and say, I hate this bloody, monitoring collar they've put on me. It's a real albatross around my neck.
Very good. They find that very offensive, actually, Anna. Didn't see for such a long time where you were going with that.
I knew I'd have to see it all the way through. It's just not quite common parlance enough that you don't have to finish it off.
There's only one other thing I know about cheetahs, and it's that this is a really strange thing. It's that if you have cheetahs in a zoo, you have to be really careful to pick up their poos, because there's a particular disease which is spread via cheetah feces, and normally they have massive ranges, and they never come across their own poos again. Well, obviously that's not the case in a zoo, but in the wild, scientists study them by their poos, but it's a real problem because cheetah families all poo at the same time. So
they do say a family that poos together stays together, don't they?
It's really a nightmare. So you've got a cheetah family, you're a scientist observing them, and it gives you the DNA, and you can work out who's fathered whom, which is really interesting because cheetah females mate with lots of different males and then produce a litter. You can have 3 different cubs in a litter by 3 different fathers. So it's useful to know who's fathered whom for your studies, but obviously they spread out and do their mass poo at the same time. You have to photograph all the cheetahs as they poo. You have to map the poos. Then you have to assign the right poo to the right cheetah, and then you can study them by the DNA. I
remember growing up in quite a large family, and every morning it was a bit of a stress to see who could get in for a shower first. But imagine the jeopardy if you all have to poo at the same time. That is, oh my God, that cue.
If I've just had a Vindaloo, and I've got my 7 siblings there, and I'm saying I'm absolutely desperate, guys. Are you ready yet? Well, I have to wait sort of 7 hours until one of them's managing to crimp one out. It's very stressful. And then do you see, that's why sometimes when you're wandering through Africa, you see bags hanging on trees, don't you? From the cheetah scientists who've left those poo bags there, and they always claim they're going to come back and pick them up.
In recent podcasts, I was mentioning to us how Stephen King is the master of just taking anything and turning it into a horror story, no matter how ridiculous. He just knows how to do it. So have you guys heard of the Stephen King story, The Mangler?
No.
No.
And this was made into a movie. The story is about a police detective investigating a sudden rash of deaths caused by an industrial laundry press. And this is a laundry press that has become possessed by a demon. So the villain in this actual story is a laundry press itself, going around killing people. Yeah. He can
Going around?
Well,
That's
actually,
he's more interesting to me.
He's in his laundry room. So no.
Oh, so you're safe if you don't go in the laundry room.
Yeah,
that's a good strapline for the film.
In fact, I suppose you're kind of probably safe as long as you don't put yourself into the mangle, right?
Yeah,
because it's not. It can't
the mangle
really,
must be able
yeah.
to. The mangle must have some kind of independent movement where it can attack you, right?
How? How's it going to move?
It might lure you in. It might be like, hey, come. It might speak and get you to go to it or something like that. But I see what you're saying, James. It's like we're all safe from Charles Bronson unless we go into his cell. Like that's you're right. Just don't go into his cell.
Oh, that's a terrifying thought to leave us all with.
Well, they were very dangerous, though, Mangles. So in a way, this sounds like it was more historical documentary than his classic horror. People used to get injured all the time. I was reading a book that was called Save Women's Lives, The History of Washing Machines, which was written in 2003 about how... And it was by a guy who runs a museum about washing machines. And he said whenever he showed people around, at least one older person would reveal a scar they had from a mangle at some point. So every time he had one woman who was like, oh yeah, and revealed a huge bald patch on her head from where she was scalped by it. Because they'd be steam powered quite often and then electric, of course, so you couldn't stop them. So if you got your hair caught in a mangle, that's your scalp.
Then why are all these people who presumably have PTSD from being mangled in a mangle going to a mangle museum?
It's Stockholm syndrome, isn't it? They've fallen in love with their mangler.
Wow. You see, Stephen King, finger on the pulse. There's obviously a huge market for this.
I gotta say, Dan, honestly, you always tell us how great Stephen King is, and then you regale us with some bullshit story that makes no sense at all.
Diane Keaton, just a bit of celebrity trivia.
Yeah.
Diane Keaton wore clothes pegs on her nose to try and make it thinner.
Really?
Never had any surgery, plastic surgery, but in many ways this is a kind of surgery. She said in an interview that she did it, and the only other person I can find who ever did that was Meg in Little Women, who used to sleep every night with a peg on her nose to make her nose thinner.
Right.
Oh,
I don't think it worked for either of them.
But she must have got the idea from Little Women, right? Unless she got it from a cartoon. Because that's the only other people I could think who do that.
Yeah. Was she
nose.
doing this when she was a child, Anna?
No, when she was a young woman.
Yeah, if you watch Annie Hall again, Andy, you'll see Diane Keaton has a peg on her nose the entire time. Not the new ones, they've CGI'd it out, but yeah, the original.
Anna, did you read that fact while reading about Silvio Saba by any chance?
I didn't actually. So tell me about Silvio.
Well, he can teach Meg from Little Women and Diane Keaton a thing or two, because he has the record for the most clothes pegs on his face at the same time in 1 minute. Actually, the most clothes pegs added to the face within a minute.
Right.
Hazard a guess?
Well, I don't think, maybe my skin isn't stretchy enough, but I can only imagine being able to get 3 or 4 on mine before it gets too stretched out.
I'm going to be honest, the Guinness World Record is higher than 4.
Yeah, but I didn't expect, when you asked me, or when I said what I could do, I wasn't thinking, well, when you say, how fast did Usain Bolt run the 100 meters? I don't think, well, I could do it in about 15 seconds, so probably about the same. If it's a world record holder, it's going to be better than me.
It is better.
5.
5.
6.
There we go.
Okay, let's be serious. 7.
Okay, thanks, guys. It's 51 in a minute.
51, so that's almost 1 a second.
I know. And I'm amazed at just the speed of adding them. Never mind how stretchy his skin is.
Yeah.
But he has a bit of form because he's one of these guys who has loads and loads of records. So he's got about 200 records. He's got the record for most underpants pulled on in 30 seconds.
You could actually do both of those records at the same time if you had an outdoor clothesline, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I was reading about Russian dances and Russian balls. They had a ball season in Russia, which lasted from Christmas until Maslenitsa, which is like Pancake Day. It was brought in by Peter the Great, so they were compulsory. If you're in high society, you had to go to these balls. The only way is if you had a serious illness or you were in mourning, you could miss the ball, but otherwise you had to do it. And then you would do all of these dances. You would start with the waltz, and then you would do a Hungarian dance, and then you'd do another dance, and then the final one was the mazurka, which was like a big Russian dance where everyone puts their arms around each other, but then you pair off as well. And of course, anyone who's read Anna Karenina will be very familiar with that kind of thing, because of course, when Anna came into the ball and she danced with Alexei, that was kind of the big... Sorry, that's a bit of a spoiler.
Don't push your luck, James, mentioning Anna Karenina. We've got to move on.
There used to be cheetahs in America, like not pet cheetahs, but real kind of wild cheetahs. Well, they're false cheetahs, but they're kind of very similar. They're called Myracynonyx, they were known as, but they died out. And the only reason we know about them is because they have in North America, they have pronghorn. And pronghorn are really, really fast, and they move in lots of directions and stuff like that. And the only way that they could have evolved to have run and dodge and kind of jump around is if there had been a predator that was chasing after them. And so they realized that there must be this other thing, and so they called it Myracynonyx, which is a false cheetah. Yeah.
That's so clever.
And do we have evidence that this cheetah existed?
They haven't quite found the bones or anything yet, but they just have inferred that there must have been a predator that was faster than these pronghorn. Otherwise, why would they evolve to get so fast?
Because it's fun. I think that's a big inference.
It's fun.
It's fun going fast. Why do people buy Lamborghinis?
Yeah, well, there used to be a predator that had even faster cars than us that used to come after us, and that's why we evolved Lamborghinis.
I didn't know that.
Can I quickly tell you one thing? I don't think it'll go anywhere, but the first Polish language encyclopedia I just read the other day was called Noe Atene, which meant New Athens. And their definition of the word horse is, everyone knows what a horse is.
It feels like that was the last article they had to write, and they just didn't have the will to do it properly anymore.
It's such a good thing. But apparently, and I don't know any Polish, obviously, but apparently everyone knows what a horse is has become kind of a phrase to mean something that is more obvious than it seems. Like, it looks like a really technical thing, but actually it's really simple. So...
Right.
But you still on that encyclopedia entry, it became a sort of in-joke in Poland.
Exactly.
That is
really
so
nice.
good.
There was a website, Movies for Men, it's called, that did a list. They went through 350 films, and they did a death count compiling the deadliest actor list. And this was a few years ago, so it might have changed. I don't know if the Expendable movies have been used in this. But so, you know, Aliens, Die
I think they're
Hard,
all kind of
Terminator.
expendable movies, really, aren't they?
I can't believe you've been driven to going to all these incel websites, Dan.
So there's a top 10 list. And who do you think has more kills? Is it Schwarzenegger or Stallone?
Well, I would have said Schwarzenegger, personally.
I think so too. There are a couple of unbelievably silly sort of commando films where... So I'll say Schwarzenegger too.
Schwarzenegger.
Anna, you're not allowed to guess on this because
No,
you're not a man.
they're not movies for me, are they?
So it is Schwarzenegger, who has, as far as I can tell, 842 kills. He ranks number 4 on the list. Number 6 on the list
Can we guess
is
who's number
Sylvester
one? Is it
Stallone.
possible?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Have we heard of number one?
Oh, and Stallone, by the way, has 786. So it's not a huge difference between the two of them.
Is it?
But yeah,
Dan?
who's in at number 1 with 1,296 kills?
Wow.
I would say it's Moff Tarkin in Star Wars who blows up the planet of Alderaan, of course, which I'm guessing now has a much lower population than previously imagined.
Okay, killing an entire planet. That's good. What about Thanos?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I can't imagine who'd get... It's Dan,
Someone in war films, right?
You can't be including pressing a button on a bomb, right? Otherwise,
Yeah,
that's
I think
unfair.
this is...
They've got to be hand to hand.
hand to hand almost. So I'll give you
Oh,
who's
is it
above.
your
I'll give you 3 and 2. Number 2 is Dolph Lundgren. with 919. 2 is Jet Li with 1,076.
Is it that guy you like?
I know it'll be, Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, was he one?
He does not appear on the list.
Oh,
No.
someone like that.
Someone who played a famous.
Jackie Chan,
maybe.
I mean. Jackie Chan.
Yeah, no, Jackie Chan doesn't appear on the list either.
Is it someone
More
who played?
pacifist Jackie Chan, likes to keep people alive.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it Pikachu from Detective Pikachu?
Yeah, that was a bloodbath, that movie. I really regret taking my 3-year-old to that.
What is it? Is it
I don't
Rupert
know.
Everett? I mean, how surprising are we going?
Let me give the answer. The answer is Mila Djokovic. The only woman to appear on the list of the top 10 in the man list with 1,296.
Oh, that's
kills.
sticking one to the incels, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Are we talking Resident Evil?
Resident
She was in
Evil,
all
yeah.
6 Resident Evil films, all of which I've seen.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Have you?
They're great. They're so good.
You
Is
were the
it
one who
just
tallied up
death?
the kills for the site, weren't you?
Well, a lot of them are zombies in those films. So, but I guess that counts.
That's it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what criteria movies for men used in
Yeah,
scientific
how
studies.
rigorous is their research, do you think? I had pineapple last night for dinner by sheer coincidence.
With?
And the reason I had it actually with caramel sauce poured on top that we received as a Christmas present from some people that we work with.
Anna, are you okay? Sorry, that just sounds like a meal of last resort, is what I'm trying to say. Like, we'll use the Christmas caramel sauce and pour it on top of the pineapple.
I mean, it does feel like you had a certain amount of food at Christmas 2 months ago, and you're getting to the really last bits of the Christmas buffet.
It has been there for a while, and it was the beginning of December they sent it. Because I hate waste, and the pineapple was just going off because no one wants to eat a pineapple that's been sitting in our fruit bowl for 2 weeks because it gets delivered with the fruit delivery. And this is why, there's this thing where in the 1700s, people didn't eat pineapples because they were so treasured, they just used them for decoration. But I think it's just because they're such an arse to break into. You can't be bothered.
Yes.
You just
They
can't
are
be
a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
This is not going to go in, but I always make like a green curry and put it inside the pineapple, right? So you scoop out all the pineapple stuff and then you put the green curry inside. But it is unbelievably difficult to scoop out. It's all right if you slice it up. It's not that hard. But if you're trying to scoop out the inside, it's completely impossible.
Do you eat the pineapple on the side
Pineapple
of the green curry?
goes in the curry as well.
Very nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
And then I save some of it and usually have it with like meat the next day when I used to eat meat. Because it goes well with gammon and stuff, doesn't it?
Yes.
Classic.
Anyway, join us next week for Cooking with Harkin. Yeah.
That's funny. Who takes the most naps on the planet in national terms?
Well, I would have thought like the Spaniards, maybe, for
Yeah,
siestas and...
Spain have such a reputation for their siestas, and it's not borne out. Almost 60% never have a siesta. Spanish working hours are longer, and they tend to sleep a bit less than the rest of Europe. And do you know whose fault it is?
Was it like the Nazis? They're usually to blame for everything, aren't they?
Yeah.
It was the Nazis.
Ah.
It's the fascists.
But it's the Spanish fascists, presumably.
Actually, no,
Frank-
it's the German fascists in cahoots with the Spanish fascists. So in 1942, General Franco, fascist, changed the country's clocks in Spain to match Berlin's time zone in solidarity with Hitler. And no one ever changed them back. And so Spain is on Central European time, or European Central Time, which is the same as Warsaw, 1,200 miles east of there. And this is a mad time zone for the country of Spain to be in. It's part of the reason that Spanish people work. I mean, also the weather and so on. But, Spanish people tend not to eat until 9 p.m. They don't go to bed before midnight. There is a whole campaign to get Spain back onto GMT because Spain is just not in the right time zone for the circadian rhythms of the people who live there.
Wow.
Weird.
Yeah.
You would have thought there's a real two strong arguments. A, it really doesn't work for them in terms of their circadian rhythms. And B, it's got a strong association with fascists.
I know.
Ditch it, guys.
Can I say one more thing about soap detergent, seeing as this was about dazzles?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
There is a thing at the moment in Europe called the CERN Axion Solar Telescope. And it's at CERN, and they're trying to find these tiny particles called axions. And axions are particles that are a little bit related to the Higgs boson and things like that. They're going to help us explain what dark matter is if we find them. They were named by a guy called Frank Wilczek. And the reason that he called them axions is because that was his favorite soap powder that he used. And he said that it sounded a bit like a subatomic particle, doesn't it? An axion. Kind of sounds like it. But he said if they find them, it will clean up a problem with particle physics.
Lovely.
And
nice.
He's also got the best intern's name ever. You know, who's going to sort this out? Oh, Frank will check.
Do baboons have sex for pleasure, or do they just have it for procreation?
Oh, I don't know.
I suspect pleasure. They seem like fun-loving criminals.
Well,
I know bonobos do.
Yeah,
they're
bonobos love it.
Like kind of an in-between. I don't know.
bonobo is nearly an anagram of baboon.
Well, that's why I was thinking, actually. Yeah.
I
think if any animal is an anagram of another animal, I'm always disappointed when melons and lemons don't taste the same. I think they kind of should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they both got boobs and knobs if you sort of break their names down.
They do, yeah.
That sounds quite sexy.
Yeah.
Well, we've revealed a lot.
This is why lexicographers and zoologists are very different beasts.
It's so nice to leave knowledge out there for the experts. Any baboon experts listening won't feel threatened by this podcast, I think.
I think my favorite thing that I found out about Air Force One is that there was a room temperature button, a little dial that was added onto the plane. And this was because President Johnson, when he was vice president, he kept arguing with the crew about lowering and raising the temperature of the cabin. He was like, it's too cold or it's too hot. And so they eventually got tired of this and they installed a temperature control in the conference room, but it was fake. Didn't work at all. And so he could go up and change it on his own, never changed anything, but he'd go, that's better, and sit down and think that he'd controlled the weather inside.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, that's what we call gaslighting in this day and age. Poor guy.
There was a haunted rocking chair in the 50s. Did anyone read about that?
No.
I read about
the
this.
Devils.
It was in a blog called Strange Company, which I can highly recommend. It's an unbelievably good blog. And this was an article from the Baltimore Sun of the April the 29th, 1950, about a rocking chair with a mind of its own. And what it was is there was a family called the Floyd Holidays, and they had a rocking chair, and it just wouldn't stop rocking all the time. And it just had rocked non-stop for 37 days. And it became really, really famous and was on TV in America. And would go on chat shows. And these people would go on chat shows and they'd be like, yeah, we've got a rocking chair that won't stop rocking. And a load of people kind of went to visit the house. They almost got rid of it because so many people were coming to visit this haunted rocking chair. And some people said that maybe it was vibrations from the refrigeration motor that was going off right next to it. But sure enough, when they moved it to another house, it carried on rocking as well. And then eventually they took it to be on TV, this rocking chair, and it had to go through an airport. And some vandals, hearing about it, ripped it up and kind of looked inside it to see if there was some motors or something like that. And it was insured for $1,000. So the insurance company said, we'll either give you $1,000 or you can have $700 and you can keep the chair. And that's what they went for, but it kind of stopped continually rocking at that point. And we don't know why it was rocking all the time, but most people think that perhaps it was, the legs were in a way that they never quite got in,
But hang on, isn't that a perpetual motion machine? Isn't that the thing we're told can't happen?
Exactly, that's why it's mysterious. That's why it's in the newspapers, Andy.
Oh.
I can't believe all the world's scientists, all the brilliant minds have not yet figured out this rocking chair.
I imagine probably they had other things to figure out. But basically what happened was whenever it started moving, I assume it just took ages to stop and then other things would get it moving again and it just would carry on rocking for ages.
I bet that when people came to see it, they said, right, don't go into the room just yet. Then as soon as anyone went in, the chair was rocking, but also Grandpa was just shuffling away from it. They said, right, look, there, you've seen it's rocking and no one's sitting in it. Right, you better leave. Come on, get out.
You're probably right.
Donald Trump, obsessed with badgers, apparently. Sorry, I know we all thought we'd never have to talk about him again, and I'm bringing it back. But there was a report near the start of his term that he, from within the White House, among his staff, that said he would constantly be asking Reince Priebus, who was his chief of staff at the time, about badgers and was interrogating him because Reince was from Wisconsin, which is the home of the American badger. I think it's their state animal. And he'd say things like, do they have personality? Are they boring? How do they work? Are they mean to people? He was desperate to know about badgers.
Wow. There was a badger in the White House, wasn't there? I think it was Roosevelt had one called Josh. I'm going from memory here.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt, because he had almost all animals, didn't he? As in he had a lot of crazy pets.
I think he might have, this is again also from memory, but was he in Wisconsin and like a little girl said, do you want a badger? And he said, yeah, sure. And then she went away and 10 minutes later came back with a badger. And then he had to keep her or something.
It's awkward.
Yeah.
Maybe Trump read about that and thought, if Teddy gets one, I want one. I mentioned it mainly because did you know that the nickname that Scaramucci had for Reince Priebus was Rancid Penis?
It's amazing that Scaramucci only lasted 10 days in his job with his knack of making friends. I've got this isn't a gross butterfly, actually. It's just a weird sex butterfly thing, which is, and it's another American one, actually. It's in the Sierra Nevada mountains. There's a butterfly which has been discovered to be a hybrid of two completely separate species of butterfly, which at some point shagged each other and produced fertile offspring.
Oh,
and
wow.
That's completely counter to the way the tree of life normally works, where species split, branches split. So this is one of a handful of cases of branches merging.
Wow, is this the beginning of the end? Is this when we all start contracting back down into one single amoebic species?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. So we're all,
And we're back to this theory, are we, Anna? This theory is from about 4 years ago, which is
What's the theory?
Well, that we're all going to evolve back into amoebas.
Oh, wow.
I'd forgotten I'd had it before. It's good that I'm consistent. If not good that I forget what I've said as soon as I say it.
Okay, here's the thing about changing from black and white to colour and back again.
Yeah.
This is mad. And it's kind of, I guess, so James's fact is about the Israel removing colour. And that was done again in the UK in 1970 by ITV, where the staff went on strike. They went on a 3-month colour strike where they were objecting over their pay rates. And so they just started making shows black and white again. And because these are quite technical shows to be filmed, they just refused to work with the colour TV equipment. They switched off the colour tubes on the cameras they were working with.
Wow.
And for 3 months, ITV just had to go back to black and white because the staff were...
God.
I know.
So funny.
That's... Wow.
And then eventually they resolved the strike and they were willing to make colour TV shows again.
I wonder if they lost a lot of viewers in that time.
Don't know.
If they, last year when the Archers couldn't handle COVID because it seems to be run by a 120-year-old person. So it was just monologues for about 6 months. And I think, a lot of people said they would leave the show, but their listenership has sustained and recovered. So maybe the same.
Great news.
Yeah. But it's
and the Archers
similar, right?
Is neither black and white nor colour, actually, the Archers, obviously.
Depends what your imagination is like. For me, it's just like the TV's turned off. It's like a Fantasia. But that is true, isn't it? That some people, is that right? That some people imagine things in black and white, I think.
Yeah.
Or dream in black and white.
Dream in black and
it's
white.
when they grew up with black and white TV, isn't it? Or if they were kids. James, you know that condition that you have, the aphantasia?
Yeah.
Where you can't imagine, what is it? You can't imagine
anything.
Things that are not.
Images.
Images that are not there.
Yeah, I can't colouse my eyes and imagine anything.
I was thinking the other day, it's very weird that it's called aphantasia because Disney's Fantasia is one of the most extravagant, colourful, imaginative things ever made.
Do you know what the prefix A means?
No.
It means without.
Yeah.
It does make
So absolutely not weird at all when you
when you really break it down.
Blow this shit wide open. Okay. Hey, there was another musical knife that I found, which was from Switzerland in the early 19th century. It's really gorgeous. It's like an early, very basic Swiss Army knife. But it's got 2 blades, one for fruit and one for flowers. And if you can imagine a tiny Swiss Army knife.
What's the difference between those two things? It's like you've got your fruit knife and you're trying to cut a top off a flower. You're like, this is not working at all.
I will tell you, I know what it's for because the fruit blade is gilt. and that's so the fruit juice won't corrode it when you slice your lemon.
Fine, I suppose that does make sense.
Exactly. And then the flour one, I guess, is no problem. But it's got a musical mechanism inside, and this is, I think it's from about 1800, and it's got a little clockwork barrel inside, and it plays music. And this was on the Antiques Roadshow a few years ago.
Sounds incredibly annoying at the dinner table, doesn't it? And it's going to ruin the vibe if you are trying to murder someone. If you stab someone in the heart and it starts playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, you're doing it.
Well, is that what happens at most of your dinner parties, Anna?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
We've got a very big cellar.
There are some industry legends of naming drugs, which I like as well. Arlene Tech is very famous in the biz as the woman who named Viagra. That was her huge innovation. Yeah. And she did it by speaking to... So Viagra is a brand name, not a generic name.
Yeah.
And she did it by asking a group of urologists what it's like, what it feels like for men when you've had erectile dysfunction and then it's cured. And one of the doctors said, imagine a strong stream. And she combined the word vigorous and the word Niagara and came up with Viagra.
Really
And
that's good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Clever.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
The US can be strict on its rules about, like, even brand naming, right? You've got quite strong rules of brand naming. And the US rules seem to basically say you're not allowed to suggest that the medicine works. So there are a few things, like there's a hair regrowth treatment called Regain. It's called Regain in Europe and the rest of the world. In America, it's called Rogaine, because you're not allowed to suggest that it's always going to cause your hair to regrow.
But I think hair growth stuff is generally...
Oh, it's dodge as hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. They're damn right. There's another one which is a stop smoking tablet that you take, which is called Champix. And in America, it's Chantix or Chantix, because Champix is a little bit too triumphant.
A bit like Champion.
Exactly. And what if you're not a champion? What if you take them and then you're back on 40 a day by the end of the week? It's misleading.
I guess it's a bit like that thing about how digestive biscuits weren't allowed to be called that in America because they don't help your digestion. Is that right?
Yes.
Gosh, it's very literal.
But the champion thing, you should be allowed to call your thing like awesome pill, even if it's not, right? Like you should just,
Dan,
in theory.
you would have been a quack in the 18th century.
Roll up, come and see Daniel Schreiber's Pills of Mystery. Stick 'em up your bum. It'll make you flow like Niagara. You know the song WAP by Cardi B?
I've read reports about it in the Daily Telegraph.
There was a Republican who was going for Congress this time called James P. Brady, who said that every time he heard the song, it made him want to pour holy water into his ears.
Wow.
What's wrong with this song, WAP? What's it?
It stands for wet ass pussy, and it's about
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's
Get
about
me some holy water right now.
it's an extremely
disgusting.
feminist song about women taking charge of their sexuality.
I've just said that's disgusting, James, so that's going to sound really bad now.
And holy water will only make things wetter. What you need is a holy towel, some holy kitchen roll, perhaps.
She credits Popeye with saving her life.
Who, olive oil?
Yeah, is that not who we're talking about? Oh, damn, we're on Dolly Parton. No, she credits Popeye the dog with saving her life.
Popeye the dog, of course.
Popeye the dog, you know, the
Popeye the
second most
dog?
famous Popeye. It was in the 1980s where she fell in love with someone. I think didn't have any physical relationship, but she kind of, you know, she was married, but it's a long time. She fancied someone else, was upset when he didn't fancy her, and she looked at a revolver. And it's weird because Dolly Parton's such a bubbly, cheerful person, but for a moment she looked at the little gun she keeps in her bedside table for when she gets burgled, and she thought about killing herself, and then she said she heard the little tap, tap, tap of Popeye the dog's feet coming up the stairs, and she took it as a message from God. In fact, she told the Times in an interview, well, you know, God is dog backwards, so I took it as a message from him. Dogs are God's little pockets of friendship he sends our way. And it snapped her out of it.
Wow. There's one thing physically that we don't know about Dolly, which is what her arms are like. So she always, despite spending 50 years wearing very tight or very revealing costumes in lots of ways, she's always got sleeves.
She's just got very long sleeves on. And there is a conspiracy theory, and even saying that, I've talked it up way too much. There is a slight, small, tiny subsection of fan belief that she's absolutely covered in crazy tattoos, from wrist to shoulder. And it's possible, but she's been asked about it, and she's denied. In fact, she issued quite a clever denial, where she only actually denied that she has snake tattoos. So we know her arms are not covered in snake tattoos, but they might be. There might be all sorts of other tattoos on her. We don't know.
There are other types of tattoo.
Yeah,
so many others.
But I've just Googled Dolly Parton images.
Yeah,
I can see her arms. Her arms are here. She's on the front cover of Playboy, for example.
She may have got the tattoos after she did the Playboy cover. Recently, she wears sleeves. That's what I'm saying.
Possible.
I have to say, I've now done what Dan's done, and maybe it's our different search preferences, but I can't see any naked arms in any of these pictures. Wow. Here's some naked arms. There we go.
Put in Dolly Parton Playboy, because that's a famous thing that she did, and she's asked to do again for her 75th birthday, which has now happened, and I don't think it's happened for her, that she's back on the cover. But she was a Playboy model, and yeah, her arms are
all right. Fake arms.
I've just Googled Dolly Parton's arms. And there are definitely a few images relatively recent.
All right, guys, we don't have to just, there is such a thing as arm makeup, can I remind you?
Yeah.
Other tattoos.
Yeah.
And I don't like us just Google image searching my admittedly quite weak fact about Dolly Parton's arms.
I'm more amazed by the fact that there's such a thing as arm makeup.
Again, please don't Google whether or not arm makeup exists.
I'm just going to do that.
Makeup
Is there a such thing as arm makeup?
There definitely is. They do it for movies, don't they? They do it for movies all the time.
Yeah, but you wouldn't sell arm makeup in a separate section of the shop to leg makeup. They'll just be skin makeup, won't there?
Is leg makeup a thing?
Yeah,
I'm not saying leg makeup is a thing.
You just did.
Oh no, I'm being corrected in real time, and Dan, it feels horrible. I don't know how you
not nice,
this long.
You get used to it though. You do. You eventually learn to love it.
300 more episodes of it, Andy, and you'll have toughened up.
Here's a fun thing about sunglasses and tanning.
Oh yeah,
there is a theory that if you don't wear sunglasses, you can get a tan, even though you're wearing suntan lotion and you wearing clothes. So there's a theory that just exposing your eyes to light, that will help you tan. And this is based on an experiment in mice. So I don't think an equivalent's been done on humans, as far as I know. Basically,
how do you tell if a mouse is tanned?
Well,
you just shave it, don't you?
I guess you shave it. Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
So this was an experiment in 2000, and the scientists involved they dressed mice in tiny suits of aluminium foil, adorable little mini mouse armor, and they gave them holes for the eyes. Okay, so they had your armor mice, and then they had normal mice, and they exposed both sets of mice to UV light for a year, and then they looked at their skin, and it turned out that both sets of mice, even the ones which had been wearing suits of armor all year, had similar amounts of melanin in their skin, implying that it was the exposure of the eyes that was the thing which was giving them the melanin.
Right. Does that also, if you take that in the other direction, if you go sunbathing with your eyes closed, then you won't get a tan?
Yeah.
People have suggested that. No, people think,
really?
And it's because it's online. I think probably off the back of this experiment, people think that if you wear sunglasses, then your body will be tricked into thinking that it's not sunny, and so it will not produce melanin, and so you'll get burned really badly.
Wow.
And it's weird. No one's properly debunked this yet, but there was a molecular biologist who was asked this, who said that it is not your eyes, at least in humans, that trigger the hormone response in the pineal gland, which make you produce melanin. It is your skin. So it definitely doesn't happen in humans.
Okay.
In mice, clearly different setup going on.
Yeah.
But don't worry, wearing sunglasses is not a substitute or a counteraction of suntan cream.
Okay. I love just jumping back to Andy's description quickly of the mice. It's such a fine line, isn't it, between what you would say is animal cruelty in the kind of way you tell a story. A lot of people would be like, and for a year they dressed them up in tinfoil, these poor mice. But Andy's sort of going, they look like cool little knights. They had a fun time, didn't they? You're the kind of guy, Andy, they would hire for movies just so they can say no animals were harmed during the making of this movie.
All the animals had a whale of a time in the making of this movie.
Except the whales, who were terribly mistreated.
I like this one. I found one drug that's called anakinra, which is a balm that you put on your neck if you've just had it knocked off by a train.
Come on,
Dad. It's actually for arthritis. Yeah.
Oh, it's a real thing.
Oh,
yeah,
poor
it's a real
Anna
thing.
Karenina.
Anna
She
Karenina.
never lived to experience arthritis. I found out a nice term. This is just a bit of drug industry slang, and it's when a drug is no more effective than a placebo. And the term for that is crossing the futility boundary. Because literally the drug is completely pointless. It doesn't do any better than a placebo drug. So, yeah, you've crossed the futility boundary. So you can use that in day-to-day life now.
Hopefully we can't buy many of these drugs, right? Surely they're not being approved.
I just mean in day-to-day life, you can say in your own activities, I've really crossed the futility boundary on this whatever activity.
Broaden it out.
Like if you're watching a TV series and you're 3 seasons in and you're still not enjoying it.
Do you think we've crossed the futility boundary of this section of the podcast?
I think the podcast in general some years ago crossed the futility boundary. The Texas theme reached number 6 in the UK charts in 1992, and Andrew Lloyd Webber was the man behind it.
I bought it. I remember.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Andrew Lloyd Webber composed the tune?
No, he remixed it, didn't he?
It's a Russian folk song.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's by Nikolai Nekrasov.
You speak Russian, James. Can you give us a little excerpt, possibly?
Yeah.
Just because I did it off mic earlier on. Thanks. I'll try. So it goes. Oj, polna moja karabuszka, jest i tietzi parcia. Pożelaj duszę na buszka, mala dziecka wopliecia. There you go.
Woohoo! Nice one.
Beautiful.
Very
and then,
cool.
so Andrew Lloyd Webber then took that very well-known traditional tune and passed it off as his own. Sounds very unlike him.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow. Musical industry
That's
gossip
just
there.
a little slam from having listened to too many Lloyd Webber soundtracks over the years.
Wow.
Also rendering this podcast completely legally unstable.
Okay, that's all of our facts. Apologies for my singing there. If you would like to get in contact with me and tell me how terrible my voice is, you can get in touch with me on @JamesHarkin. You can get in touch with Andy on @AndrewHunterM. You can get in touch with Dan on @Schreiberland. And if you want to speak to Anna, you can email her on podcast@qi.com. Of course, there is our group account on Twitter, which is @NoSuchThing. And if you'd like to learn anything more about the show, get some merchandise, maybe get some tickets to come and see us live, then you can get all that information at nosuchthingasafish.com. Okay, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.